have some general concepts about here are my values around money. Here are some of the lessons I've learned and some of the things I want to carry forward into my family's values ongoing, next generations. Here's the things that are important to me. Are they equally important to you?
Finding love later in life can be a beautiful new chapter, but without proper planning, it can also open the door to financial and legal minefields. Now, whether you're starting over after a divorce or the loss of a partner, there are key estate planning steps that you really need to revisit, or you will risk turning the second chapter of your life into a family dispute and disaster just waiting to happen. Well, welcome back to Steadyhand's Coffee Break video series, where we share insights to help you, our Canadian clients and friends, navigate your financial future with confidence. Today, we're joined by Janet Gray, a respected advice-only financial planner with Money Coaches Canada. Now, I love the work that Money Coaches do, and I have a Google alert for any time that they're in the news. Last week, I was alerted to a Yahoo Canada story featuring Janet, where she talked about the biggest estate planning mistakes people make when entering a new relationship later in life. Janet, I loved the article and couldn't wait to get you back on our YouTube channel to discuss these 7 big mistakes.
Thank you. I'm always happy to be here and glad to spread this message.
Well, let's start with the big picture. Now, you've worked with many clients who are fortunate enough to find love again in their 50s, their 60s, or their 70s. What do you find are the biggest emotional or logistical challenges that they face when it comes to money and planning at that stage?
I think there's a lot of different factors, but I think I can narrow it down to 2 main ones. One of them is timing, and appreciation of the timing, current and future, and also emotions. There's a lot of emotions at play around this topic, always, for all ages possibly, but timing and emotions, they're the top.
Well, let's get to the 7 mistakes. The first mistake, which is really avoiding the money talk. And I think it's fair to say that one of the most common mistakes that you flagged is actually dodging these financial conversations and just outright avoidance around the topic of money. So why is it so hard for people to talk about money in a new relationship? And can we talk about what is the best way to start that dialogue?
I think it may be something they've done all their lives, right? It could just be a hard topic for them. A lot of it is about embarrassment. A lot of it is about inadequacy. I'm not measuring up to perhaps what they think their new partner is. It's a fear of disclosing their uneasiness and incompetence, possibly their past mistakes they've made in other relationships. So again, that whole emotional burden, but also some self-conservation that they don't want to disclose potentially too much too soon until they're a little more comfortable in where the relationship is going.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, have you found some sort of hacks to start these conversations?
I think so. I mean, you don't want to bluster into a conversation and just kind of, give everything away. But if you say, here's what I feel about my money, or here's how I've taken care of my money to get me to this point today. I've been very cautious. Are you cautious? Do you take risk? I mean, those are kind of general ballpark discussions, rather than getting into the, so I've got $1 million, do you have $1 million? Like without getting, too much into the numbers, at least have some general concepts about here are my values around money. Here are some of the lessons I've learned and some of the things I want to carry forward into my family's values ongoing, next generations. Here's the things that are important to me. Are they equally important to you?
And I guess it makes sense just to acknowledge it's an awkward conversation, but it's an important conversation. So let's dive in and let's be delicate about it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those where it's probably never going to be the ideal time, but the ideal time is do it now rather than wait until the moon and stars are in line. Like that's never going to happen. So you need to have some type of, today we said this, well, maybe that layers on to next week's conversation. So I would say that, it's again, the timing. Start now. Put the feelers out, because for some people this is going to be a deal breaker too, right? If you're not seeing that you're going to be copacetic with your new partner, it could just throw everything up, and that could be the end of the deal, end of the relationship even.
Well, just riffing off that sense of urgency, you noted mistake number 2 is delaying document updates. So This is all about procrastination, and people assume that they'll have the time at some point to update their will or the beneficiaries on their registered accounts. But what happens if they haven't done that? Can you give us some examples from your experience around, disasters?
Yeah, and unfortunately, there are some. A lot of it has to do with not kind of finalizing some of the back history that you have. You may have poor credit. You may still have some of your ex spouses or ex stepchildren or whatever that looks like as your beneficiaries or written into your will, but you've done nothing to move that paperwork forward. So a lot of it is acknowledging, okay, my situation has changed. I need to go back and change the decisions and some of the things I put in stone in that time period. So a lot of people forget to do that until it's maybe too late, or until disaster happens in the new relationship and they go, oh man, I should have changed this when I had the time to do it. So that's often when it can blow up. Maybe you haven't made accommodations for your own family before you're introducing, a new family, a new step family maybe into the mix. So a lot of it is kind of, okay, what is it that you needed to finalize, get rid of, dispose, tighten up from your past relationship, maybe just stuff that you've done, but maybe stuff that involves your previous extended family.
And if you have a $1 million RSP and you've indicated the beneficiary of that RSP in the event of your death is, say, your first spouse, and you've been divorced, and you've updated your will, and your will now is putting all of your resources to your new spouse, what happens if you do die to that RSP if you haven't actually changed the registered beneficiary on that RSP? Is it the will or is it the beneficiary?
Well, no, that's a great example. A named beneficiary has precedence over whoever's named in your estate because a named beneficiary insurance investments happens outside of the will. The will only controls whatever assets are not having a named beneficiary. So it doesn't matter if it's your ex-spouse or your ex-school teacher. It still matters that it's got a named person. So it will go to that person. And a lot of people think, well, I'm divorced. I'm actually maybe going to be remarried. No, that doesn't undo any of a named beneficiary for sure.
Okay, so this may play into why mistake number 3 is doing it yourself. So estate planning, as we've identified for blended families, is going to get complicated. But there's no doubt that people are still trying to do it themselves in order to save fees on professional services. So what are the risks of taking a DIY approach from your perspective?
Yes. So my very wise mother would say it's cutting off your nose to spite your face, which is an old expression. I'm not sure I even remember what it sounds or what it means, but it does mean that you're maybe saving cents, but it's going to cost you dollars. And it's going to be messy and hurtful. And, you're creating in family bickering and stuff. So this is such an important big topic for people who have amassed wealth and are now trying to sort out all the balls that are in the air around that wealth, because it's not just a bank account, it's investment accounts, it's money in the house, it's maybe property or art that you own. There's so much at play that I would say it's almost impossible for someone to do it without having some professional advice around it.
Totally agree. Now, mistake number 4 is an interesting one, and it's a really difficult one. I have a lot of appreciation for it, and that is having kind of no clear goals about what you want your future estate plan to look like. And so, you said in the article that many couples don't know really what they want to achieve in their estate planning. So what sort of questions should people be asking each other before they sit down and meet with a professional, whether it's a planner or a lawyer?
Well, that's something where you want to feel good in your own skin about what you want to see happen. And sometimes you're at odds with your new partner, and sometimes you're, oh yeah, I feel the same way. But until you know what it is that you want to do, and it could be you want to leave a legacy to your children, your grandchildren, to your favorite charity, you want to establish a trust at your university. There's so many things that you want to do, but without kind of pinning it down, what's your starting point? Until you have a starting point, then how can you plan to move forward? And this is something, and you know this, David, that we talk about as financial planners to people of all ages, all situations. Where are you starting from? Where is it you want to go? here's the plan to get you there. So without knowing that starting point and having, and knowing your stuff, what have you got in terms of assets, but also knowing the outcomes that you want to see, your preferred outcomes. Some of them are out of our control, of course, but at least it's opening up the channels so you can have conversations.
And this is where a discussion with a professional talking about estate planning is going to tease out those questions that you may not have the answers to now, but you're going to have to address at some point. So the fifth mistake is just simply not having a sense of your balance sheet, if I could call it that. It's really fundamentally poor financial awareness. And so before planning can really fundamentally happen, you do need to have a picture of your assets and your liabilities. And in your experience, do people come with this already having been organized? And what should be in that financial inventory?
Well, I think as organized as people think they are, they're not as much as they need to be or should be. So a lot of it is people always have an idea of what's in their bank account. That's something that they look at every day, or they could look at every day, and they understand it. It's pretty straightforward. And, they look at their investment statements and they can't quite tell, well, I have a LIF, I have a LIRA, I don't know what I have, I don't know what it means. So they don't always want to or do pay attention to it. So a lot of the time, there's so many different silos of assets that they don't see the big picture of it. They focus on, well, I need money in my bank account to pay my bills. The rest of it, I don't need to understand. I don't understand. I don't want to understand. So it really is important to gather those pieces and have an appreciation of, oh, now I understand why I can retire when I want to retire, why I can make those goals happen that I thought were impossible based on my bank account balance. So it's very important is financial awareness, but I would also say it's a bigger Canadian problem of financial literacy, sadly.
We did a coffee break with Lucy Main, who's an estate lawyer here in Toronto, and it was focused on what we called the legacy binder or the death binder. And I started doing mine a little over a year ago. I call it Are My Life in a Binder? Directions on what to do when I or we die. And I emphasize when because it's not a function of if, it's when. And we also created a one page or a list of 20 things that you need to be sort of itemizing into that inventory. We'll put a link to that PDF in the notes below, as well as a link to that video, because I think it will help people get started on that journey of not only addressing mistake number 5, not having clear goals, but also mistake number 4, but also mistake number 5. All right, moving on. Mistake number 6, and this is an interesting one. This is assuming that everyone is just going to do the right thing. So, this one really stood out for me, and that's the assumption that family members or your new partner will, quote unquote, just do the right thing. So why is relying on that so risky?
Well, it's a really nice old-fashioned idea, isn't it? That people will just do what's right. But a lot of people don't know what's right or even what the expectation is. So, if especially in a common law situation, because there's different rules applying to common law relationships and in terms of property and inheritances and stuff than there is with legally married people. But yeah, it's until you've said to them, here's what I expect will happen, until I share what my goals are and what our combined goals are, and how is anybody going to know? Because often, even if I have a will, I haven't really told my executor really what I want them to do until I've passed and now they're looking at the will. But maybe that means that I don't have in place what is needed for the executor to do what I've asked them to do or implied to them that I want done. So there's no guesswork in this. I mean, it's just not enough to just say, well, I trust them, they will take care of it. Not necessarily, because they don't know what they need to take care of.
And the family dynamics, when you're mixing families, you've got all sorts of different perspectives and permutations and combinations of perspectives. So it's really risky to not really, sort of sit down and lay things out the way you really want them to be laid out.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to kind of, for each person in the partnership, if you want to call it the relationship, to know their stuff so then they can have those conversations about what their combined stuff might look like and who's the last person left standing and what is the commitment on both their halves to that last person and to their individual family members. because, the dynamics do change as you go forward in your relationship, but also the family dynamics combined go forward. So it's a huge minefield, really, and it needs to be considered and strategized, really.
So the last mistake that you identified is a bit of a technical or practical one, and it kind of teases out some of the things you've already been referring to. And it's really about not paying attention to or being ignorant of some of the defaults that are in our legal estate system. So what are some of the common misunderstandings about how the law treats, for example, common law spouses versus married spouses? And what happens when someone dies without clear instructions, without a will, for example?
At any age or any type of relationship, dying without a will is problematic because you don't have an opportunity to legally express your final wishes. Um, in common law, if you're in a common law relationship, whether it's 2 years, 20 years or more, if your partner dies without a will, then you are covered under just regular law, and regular law says that your estate will go to your blood family members and not to the spouse that's been there for 20, 40 years, whatever. So the person who's common law and has a partner that has no will could end up with absolutely nothing. Now, if they owned a joint house together, if they'd owned, other joint assets together, that's different. But if you're depending on doing the right thing, that may not happen. And there's no law that stands behind you for that. What I suggest people do is make sure, number one, they have a will with their current partner. Maybe they want to have a domestic agreement with written up before their death, but that would be more in case of a separation, which is equally disadvantageous for someone in a when the relationship falls apart. So again, lawyers, pay the fees, get the job done right, understand that you've got some security in this by having it done by a professional.
Well, Janet, this has been incredibly helpful. And to our viewers, if you're in a new relationship and haven't yet reviewed your estate plan, don't procrastinate any longer. It's time. Having these conversations and putting it in writing isn't just about protecting your assets, it's about protecting the people that you care about and avoiding painful surprises down the road. Janet, thank you again for your wonderful insights today.
My pleasure, anytime.
Well, if you're not sure where to start, we're happy to connect you with professionals like Janet and to help guide the financial and non-financial side of your planning. So feel free to reach out to us via our website, www.steadyhand.com. Until next time, thanks for watching this edition of our Coffee Break series.